The Anacyclosis cycle is a Greek political theory which describes the natural governmental pattern that underlies a political life cycle. It basically starts where it ends, with anarchism, and the thing that takes over to restart the cycle once again from anarchism is monarchism. There are 6 life stages to this political theory, and we will be checking each one as well as going into the theory of why we may go from one stage to the next. So we're going to start first with monarchy, where one person, typically a king or a queen, kind of like in Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, is the ruler and or leader of the people, right? Of his kingdom, her kingdom, community. Now, this is good because it creates a stable society, but abuse of power can come at a high price, seen as how this type of political system tends to get complacent with time, right? And also tends to eventually ignore the people as well as the problems in the community or in the society. We can say that this was the old system, and eventually, as well as naturally, it descends into tyranny, which is when the crown or the monarchy is corrupt. Here, the objective is no longer ruling in the name of the good or the common good, but rather for power and control for the sake of simply and only power and control. This type of government can still be carried out today, such as in martial law, when there is a serious national crisis, but more often than not, it is not needed. In the case of martial law, for example, it could provide order to a chaotic and turbulent situation. But when it is not, or when it is done without it being needed, then it eventually leads to rebellion by the common people due to the dissatisfaction of being ignored and or of oppressed groups. We can see this clearly with every American revolution that has ever taken place against the governing monarch bodies in Europe, for example. This is the typical example of fight the power and we the people, right? Eventually, the system recovers from the chaos and it gets organized again, and we get aristocracy, which is the ruling of the common people by a selected few. The aristocracy in our day tend to get mixed up with oligarchs and or bureaucrats, which is the born rich for the most part. This can also be exemplified in governmental bodies such as parliaments, where it is few people or where there are a few people making the decisions due to the wisdom and the experience they have in political and society organizational matters, right? Eventually, however, this order also descends into chaos and we get oligarchy, which is defined as the corruption of the aristocracy and or the elites. This creates inequality or obvious inequality, and this type of governance aims to simply exploit the masses in benefit of the few. This naturally leads to discontent and uprisings from the many once again. Finally, we arrive at democracy, which ideologically is the rule of the many or the most. Democracy means that all of the citizens within a society have a say in what needs to or should be done within a territory or a country. As it is known, a state is composed of its population, its territory, and its government, right? So this means that everybody within and living in these boundaries gets to have their voice be heard. Everyone's opinion is respected, heard, and taken into consideration in theory, right? This type of governance promotes equality and broader participation than, say, the aristocracy or the king or queen or the monarchy, but it could devolve into mob rule, where the decision-making process gets stripped down to its basic nature of impulsive, irrational thinking, just as French polymath Gustave Le Bon talked about in his study of crowds. Very interesting study and book. Mob rule doesn't care about deliberating or thinking through problems rationally due to its nature. A mob is like the mind of a primitive man, right? Like just imagine the primitive man in his cave, right? It's emotional only. Further, this is probably where we are at as of 2024, and it seems that according to this theory, the next step is something called autocracy or mob rule. This, in essence, the corruption of democracy, or in other words, anarchism, is where we are right back at the beginning. The cycle restarts when a strong leader is called into action and is then able to set order to the chaos once again. This cycle will repeat itself, although it is worth mentioning and considering how many countries around the world, and especially their governments, seem to find themselves in different stages of this cycle, right? Not everybody is in mob rule or in democracy descending. So this, to a certain extent, could also be applied to social groups, business structures, different types of hierarchies, and family dynamics. Like, just think about when there's a new business, there's like a king, right? The head, the leader, the entrepreneur, and then maybe it gets eventually it devolves, and then it evolves into kind of like an aristocracy, right? And then eventually into like a democracy, where like you may think about like big companies like Coca-Cola, where they have, where they actually take into consideration what most of their clients are saying, right? Which is kind of hard to do in the beginning because you don't really have clients, right? And that's just talking about like a business structure. But or family dynamics, different types of hierarchies. Think about your jobs, your families, right? Think about the hierarchies that are there. So I thought I'd just mention this in this video. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace.